Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bourne. I would love if you would help us spread the word by leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts so that other innovators like you can find us. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel as well. Well, today I want to welcome Zimbabwe to the list of 60 plus countries listening from around the world. My guest today is Sohail Abbasi. He is a experienced, outcome-driven leader who specializes in the area of innovation. I'm so excited to talk to him today. He has a strong drive and dedication and just a high working capacity to specialize in early stage startup formation, acceleration, and investment. Also, lean startup, corporate startup engagement, and open innovation. He has some experience from over the last 12 years in this realm of innovation and startup ecosystem. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. Welcome to the podcast, Sohail.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to talk to you and talk to your listeners. Thank you very much.
Well, it's funny. Thanks for joining me. It's funny. We were having a conversation about what kills innovation, and I just loved your comment because it was very unique. You said one of the things that kills innovation is the not invent it here syndrome. And so I would love to title today's episode, How to Cure the Not Invent It Here Syndrome. Let's unpack that and talk about what that is and how that impacts innovation.
Yes, sure. So this is a serious problem and syndrome for many organizations and corporates who wants to uh, do innovation. Um many organizations are starting to see the need to innovate, and but still many of them have this strong opinion that they can only innovate themselves. Um, so they try to innovate inside their organization and innovate within. And that's because they believe no one knows them better than themselves. So they think they have the experience, they have the resources, they have a working business model that generates money, they have this cash cow, and they know their cash cow better than anyone else. So they are just paying attention to things that help that cash cow to make much more cash and make money. And so concepts like open innovation, crowdsourcing, or use of any other outside expertise is kind of a bridge too far for them.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I wanna ask you a little bit more about that to kinda double click down. What is behind people feeling like they can't, leverage outside processes, outside resources, outside tools to innovate? I mean, to me, it seems wise to take a little bit of what everyone is doing and try to figure out how to fit that into the ecosystem, but the way not invent it here syndrome sounds is that people aren't even looking at those tools and processes. Is that a right way of saying that?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And that there has many reasons why people are doing so. I can mention some of them later in our conversation, but I just want to go back to this definition of NIH syndrome on the Wikipedia, which it says it is the tendency to avoid using or buying products, research, or knowledge from external origins. And so this is a great definition for this syndrome. And one of the most important reasons for this attitude is a cultural thing, I guess. Um, it's rooted in the cultural way of and in the organizational culture and how leadership of a corporation looks at how they are doing at the work. So if innovation is about making new things, as you said, it sounds very good and very reasonable to, okay, let's take advantage of ideas from outside of our company and add more value to what we have right now. But uh, the uh, another reason for not it's not invented here syndrome is that it's kind of a cognitive bias which we all have personally, and collectively in our groups and companies. So this is something we have to work around and find a solution to, you know, uh, to get over it, and let's go of our silos and go out of our status quo because we want to um, create value. That's innovation using technology. And so yeah, not taking advantage of the thing that is outside of our territory is not always a good thing.
Yeah. It's interesting as you were talking, I wrote down that idea of cognitive bias. And I think what's so hard about that is when you get into an organization, you start to pick up those cognitive biases almost without knowing it.
Mm.
And it's I'm wondering what are some ways to help people break out of their cognitive bias when it comes to innovation? I mean, it seems it's kind of like it's kind of the thing about deception, right? Well, part of deception is you're deceived. I think part of a cognitive bias is you have a bias that you can't break out of. And how do we almost create this disruption in organizations to help them think differently about these cognitive biases?
Yeah, so culturally, I guess one of the most important thing to do in a corporation to overcome this kind of cognitive biases is to think about diversity. And this is not just a cool new concept that people use in their job ads. They say we are a diverse company. Diversity basically is one of the key things contributing to the innovation, and that's because you need different points of view from different people that you are not very familiar with or you haven't met yet. This idea that I believe I am not the center of the universe and I don't have possess all the knowledge in the universe.
Mhm,
That's very helpful to know. And so the bigger a corporation gets, the more they think that they know everything. So
mhm,
this is the problem that they are having. And the more you go up in a corporate ladder, it's kind of the level of stupidity are much higher than because they say there's less oxygen over there. So yeah, this kind of pride that they have in their own brand and in their knowledge, and because they hire most talented people in the world because they have lots of money, they can pay good salaries, they have lots of resources, they think that's enough, and we can do everything we want. It's just a island of very wealthy people in terms of resources and knowledge, and they are disconnected with the rest of the world. They don't know what's going on in the other places in the world. So they just their idea of innovation is basically make this thing that I am doing and making for 100 times a little bit better, some kind of improvement. And suddenly they see other small companies, startups are disrupting them and taking away their markets because they don't have this tendency and this cognitive bias. And they work
mhm.
with everyone and every other companies as and taking advantage of other inventions and researchers and other people who are doing those kind of technological innovation things.
Yeah. You talked earlier too about open innovation. Talk a little bit more about that
Mhm.
concept and how open innovation can help um, organizations move away from the not invented here bias.
Yeah, so not invented here bias is a barrier to the open innovation. It's kind of it's mutual exclusive, I would say. So open innovation, simply put, is when you open the doors of your company and let the people come in with their ideas and use their ideas in your process, in your products, and vice versa. You let the people inside your company to take out and bring their technology, the pieces of technologies and patents, and they have developed, and in bring it into new markets and make new lines of businesses for themselves and for the company. So
Mhm.
that's basically uh, a simple version of definition for the open innovation. But
I love
there,
love that.
yeah, there's a barrier to this kind of coming and going, and that's this not invented here syndrome.
hmm You know, it also reminds me of there have been certain industries that I've worked in that have been very what I would call ancillary or very just inward focused. And so what I love about open innovation is you can also take things from other industries, right? Different
Yeah,
industries have different maturity levels and they have different levels of innovation happening in them. And so being able to look even at different industries and saying what can we take from another industry, right? So if you're in the automotive industry, what can you take from the software industry? If you're
exactly.
in the manufacturing industry, what can you take from another industry to think about and look at innovation and really think outside the box?
Exactly, and one great example for that is NASA.
Mhm.
And so NASA uses all the tools and all the help they can get from different peoples and different research institutes, and also wealth of freelancers using online freelancing websites to solve very hard problems, and that if they try to solve them themselves, they are going to spend a lot of money and lots of times. But by distributing these problems they have among different peoples and different startups, they get to choose the best answer with paying the less money. And also, NASA contributed a lot to different industries as well. The technologies that are developed in NASA to be used in rockets and other things that they're doing, lots of times get uh, acquired and is used in other companies and industries as well, that they are not working in the field of space. So that's coming and going of ideas and technologies is a things that help NASA to become what it is right now.
Wow. Well, and I hear you saying this idea that when we get open innovation going, it actually helps the organization that's leaning into innovation. Sometimes I think people think that hoarding the tools that they use is protecting their intellectual property. But unfortunately, what happens is because you don't have more people working on the ecosystem, it actually slows you down from a point of innovation. And so if you think about, Apple, when they launched the iPhone, part of what they did was they created an open ecosystem for other people to work on
Exactly.
their applications, which catapulted the usage of their phone versus saying we have to hoard our technology and hide it. They actually created platforms for people to build on it. And so I think what you're saying is really wise because it leans into this idea that the more people you have thinking about the problem you're trying to solve, the further you're going to get as an organization.
Exactly. And you mentioned Apple, and people tend to think that this kind of not invented here syndrome and other syndromes like this is just happening in old industries and old corporations. That's not going to happen to well new cool companies, but that's not true. I know a lots of software developers working in a high tech companies that they believe that if they want to uh, create a piece of software, they have to make it from scratch, and they don't believe in using other available libraries and open source softwares because they think that way they can have the most control with the less cost possible, which is kind of a reinventing the wheel.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, this open source concept, this open source movement that has changed and revolutionized the whole software industry in the world, and making something like Linux and other great softwares. So this is something that people collectively are working on and developing it. So there is a lot of resources software developers can use and reuse and repurpose, but still there are many who think that that's not the case, and they have to do everything from scratch themselves.
How would you talk to, let's say that someone does want to leverage open source for a new innovation that they have. They're in a large organization. They're going to pitch that to their leader, their CEO. How do they talk about one of the probably the main issues that is on that leader's mind, which is how to mitigate risk with open source? I think there's maybe some lack of understanding or knowledge of open source. And so sometimes they feel building on open source could create a risk issue later. How do we help open their mind, open, their ability to think innovatively about open source when they're thinking about the risk?
Yeah, that's a good question. And personally, I think that's a very big challenge to change the mind of the leadership of a company who they run their company in a closed, I would say, closed source way, and now make them to think about open source. Because if you want to do open source, you have to transform your mentality to thinking open source. That's important. And you can just say, all right, doing everything closed in my silo, but I just take this thing from the open source and bring it in and use it, and then I don't care about the rest of the community. So you should contribute again to the open source community. But there is a way of working around this, and I think that's something that could help also the solve the NIH syndrome and the cure the NIH syndrome, I would say, is that because it's rooted in the culture of the organization. And what's very important for the leadership of the company, I mean, among many things, is the cost. So if you would say to that leadership that I can bring in this piece of technology, I can use this new product from outside of the borders of our territory, and I can create this new innovation and new product and make this improvement to our current product with less money than you would do inside the company. You might get some kind of attention, and if you're lucky enough to be able to do the project and prove them that what you have done cost less in comparison with other projects that they are doing right now, maybe you get a pass to do bigger things. And step by step, you can go up and ask for a much and a more budget and bigger project to do. But it takes a lot of time and energy to convince people to change their mind. And the better way, I guess, is to show them that it's possible.
I love that you said the cost factor. So that is the love language of every leader or
Exactly.
CEO, right? To show them that the innovation that you're trying to bring forward can cost less money. That is a really big deal. And I find that that is a very effective argument in how to get them to start to look at or lean into something that's open source. And then I love the second part of that, which is just go do it, show them.
Yeah.
Incubate something, build something in a smaller ecosystem and show them the possibilities. I think that those are two very powerful ways to begin a conversation about moving towards more open innovation. And then the last thing I want to just comment on that you said is you start at the exact same place I start when I talk to companies about innovation. I don't start with technology and tools, I start with mindset. If their
Mhm.
mindset is off, then they will not be able to innovate openly. If they hoard information or focus very much on silos, those are all things that if they're not open even internally, then innovating openly externally is going to be very difficult. And so there's a mindset challenge that people have when they struggle to innovate. And so we have to attack that mindset. We have to change that mindset before we can really start to have this tool and technology and patents and all these other conversations we want to have. Technology, it starts with mindset. And so just wanted to comment on a couple of those things.
So, a interesting example is how AC/DC fight has broken between Thomas Edison and Tesla. As you know, Tesla was working for Edison, and so uh, he invented the AC power, AC electricity. But Edison insisted on the DC, which was one of his inventions. It was safer, much safer than AC, but it was weaker than AC. You couldn't power up a whole city with DC. So even Edison could patent this invention of Tesla and make money of it. He tried another way, and he hired this PR firm and went on a PR war with Tesla and the whole AC concept. Even he invented the electric chair to show people how dangerous AC power could be. So, and then right now what is working is AC in the whole world. So that's one of the famous examples that happened regarding to NI syndrome, and that was because Edison was a man of great inventions and lots of pride, and a very famous person at that time. And he didn't think that anyone could challenge him because he's the great Edison. So that's the cultural thing that I am talking about, and you mentioned, and that's cognitive bias that people have, even Edison could have.
Wow. That's a just a very powerful thought that a lot of what we're focused on or working on, it can be much better, but pride oftentimes gets in the way of people really being able to um, do the best that they can. I think when we talk open innovation, we're really leaning into this idea that um, all the ideas are not in your building. You have to get outside the building. You have to talk to other people, whether it's customers, whether it's other people in your industry, and also going outside your industry to cure this problem and bringing that knowledge back to the organization and helping it to transform the organization. We don't transform by our own group think. We transform by other ideas, other thoughts,
Exactly.
by expanding our knowledge and ability. That's how we transform. We don't transform by just, everybody staring at each other internally. We've got to go out of the organization. We've got to bring that knowledge back in. And so I think that's such an important part of innovation. It's something where we can, after a few inventions, think that we are the best, that we know it all, that we have it all. And in that, we fail those that we work with.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, this group thinking is a dangerous thing when it combines with the NI syndrome. And so you are in this company, and you are the meeting, and everyone just praising the leadership, and they're just congratulating themselves for their great things they are doing and their achievement. And so this kind of group thinking, it's killed this opportunity that if anything outside of that group could enter those companies. So they have this kind of strong barrier toward open innovation is the group thinking, and that's why uh, corporates needs to work with people outside their company, and bring different people inside those meetings and those groups, and not just binding them by this contract they do, and let the people come and go, so without any attachment to the company, and just listen to them. I'm not just saying consultants, but people who can do freelance work inside the company, like this entrepreneur residence concept that is a great cure for this not invented here syndrome, because they don't have this binding contract with the company that they have to always confirm and uh, say yes to everything that their boss says. They have this kind of freedom to come and go, and they are pursuing their own passion and motivation. So this
Yeah.
is another example, another way to help cure this syndrome, I guess.
I love that. There's an article I read that talks about, I think it was in Forbes maybe, talks about zero gravity thinkers. They're people that are not held down to the politics, the culture of the organization. They're not held back and they can tell you the truth. And I think that's such an important part of curing the not invented here syndrome as well. Um,
Exactly.
where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, so I on my LinkedIn, I have this LinkedIn profile. I guess I can send the link to you, and you could put it in the notes in the show. So on LinkedIn, people can follow me and search my name. I'd be happy to be able to talk to them and share my thoughts.
Awesome. This has been so cool. I just love that we got to have this conversation today. You're also a fellow podcaster. So anytime we get to link up in the podcast community, it's always a very fun thing. So, Sohail, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope what you are doing, which is a great thing that you're doing, and it's very obvious from the name of your podcast and what you do on the social media. I hope the best for you.
Thank you so much. Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.